You're listening to Veeam Partner Perspectives with Eric Doherty. Welcome to the Veeam Partner Perspectives podcast. I'm Eric Doherty. My guest today is someone who you may know from social media, podcasts, and just being an all-around great guy, Van Flowers from Cloudian. Van, welcome to the show. Can you share a little bit about your background and current role with us? We're laughing because I've known Van forever, so I'm trying to do this formal introduction. And yeah.
Well, thank you for all those words, whatever form they're going forwards or backwards. But yeah, again, my name is Van Flowers. I go by the Vanimal. I've been doing IT, 30 plus years, something like that. I'm an ex-Veeamer, and I work for Cloudian as a senior solutions engineer now. But I think today we're going to get into kind of the better together with Veeam and Cloudian and kind of what Cloudian does. So, Eric, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm glad to do it. We've been trying to get this connected for a while, but busy schedules always prevail. So I'm glad we finally could. So as you said, you work for Cloudian. So for the uninitiated out there, can you explain to them what is Cloudian? Give us the Cloudian pitch and why partners should be working with you.
Sure. Well, if you think about AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, all of those are S3 type products. Now, we all know that there's going to be outages in just about anything that's there. But if you have the ability to have that same cost model in an on-prem solution, that's what Cloudian is. We are on-prem S3. Okay. So to give you an example, if you called up AWS on the phone and said, hey, can you bring me 5 petabytes of, S3 so I can work internally here in my lab and do some creation and stuff, the truck would back up to the dock and they would unload our product. They resell us as AWS. So
little fun fact there.
Yeah, it's a whole nother, conversation if we decide we want to talk about, what is object storage and what it does. But it suffices to say that object is now what NAS was 20 years ago. When we first heard of NAS, everybody's like, if you don't have SAN, you're not that. But I don't even know what this NAS is. It's scary. We're not going to use it. Well, you're future-proofing your data center now. And by saying that, the simple fact that V12 of Veeam is going to write direct to object storage should begin to tell you where the industry as a whole is headed. They're moving to object storage.
Yeah, that's one of the hottest questions we get asked all the time is, can we write direct? And most people, one of the things that I'm working to break, and even in my own mind, because it's a bad habit to be in, even though I know the difference, is equating object to public cloud.
Yeah.
Because it's not the same thing. It just, in its early days, it was. Now that's so far from the truth. So most folks, when they hear that Veeam feature, being able to write direct to object, they immediately think, like you said, the big three, like, well, isn't that going to be slow to go off-prem? Yeah, it is going to be slow. You really need to bring that object storage on-prem. So, everybody, especially when it comes to backups, you want cheap and deep, but you want to be able to be quick too. And that's what object on-prem solves. But you go beyond just having object on-prem. I mean, you have the ability to stretch your tendrils into other areas with that too.
Yeah,
right?
We're just scratching the surface. I mean, I think our initial conversations that we have with most Veeam customers is around ransomware, okay? We have a technology that's called Object Lock, okay? And Cloudian itself is built on the S3 API model. We are the most compatible of any product that's there. We're not like a subset of the API model. We are a true set of that. So when someone says, hey, I need to create something that's immutable, we have 2 choices. We can use a product like Veeam, which we love to work with on a daily basis, or we could go in through command line and create a bucket and turn that object lock technology on inside that bucket. Does exactly what it does when you're out talking about Veeam, Eric, is that, hey, guys, if you set this up for 35 days, you're not going to get to do anything but restore from this until it goes past that expiration period. You can't get to it, but neither can the bad guys. So,
yeah, and it's something that a lot of folks are still getting their education on. And, first question we always ask, especially as soon as somebody says ransomware, the first thing they always ask is immutability. Wherever that is. This continues the end-to-end immutability story that we have. But it also, and this is where sometimes, putting on the architect hat for a second, people forget to do the math when they say, keep that stuff available for 30, 35 days.
That's
They
right.
better calculate that into their storage calculations when they're designing, because things work a little differently when you start locking files.
Yeah.
But that's just something to keep in mind as partners are designing with customers is
Mhm.
while you can do it, make sure you're doing it properly. And whatever you do, don't set that lock for too long because you're going to be overusing storage. Of course, Van wants you to buy more storage, but he wants you to buy it for the right reasons. He doesn't
Yeah,
want you to buy it
but
because you made a
we still
mistake.
do we still do the educational piece because there's nothing worse than, someone who's learning what they need to be doing and how they need to set those retention times and periods, and they make a mistake. You don't make a mistake with this. When you write that bucket and set it up and you set and drop data in it, you can't go, oops, you make a new bucket,
Exactly. And then you wait for that to time out so you can reclaim that storage. Yeah.
Exactly correct. The
Yeah.
other thing too about object that, as we kind of look down that path going forward, think about the other folks that we do a lot of stuff with, like the CDC, the folks that do genomics research, anything that does like evidentiary files, like law firms, police video camera invest, those kinds of things. Those are the types of product that we'd love to have dumped onto Cloudian because the Cloudian is an expensive storage medium, but it gives you the ability to write direct to that with those products and then go back and say, hey, well, I need to pull this piece of evidence because I scanned it from microfiche or PDF or whatever on this murder trial. Okay, well, some of those murder trials, and depending on which one of our customers or what it is, can be a 35-year retention period. Okay. The last thing you want to do is put that kind of stuff on a tape for 35 years because the Lord knows when our kids are out of college, they won't even know how to get the hardware to write something back from something that was written on tape 30 plus years ago,
Well, you
So,
think about that 35 years ago, that would mean that a tape that was created before you and I even got into this industry would have
right.
to be restored today. What does that even look like?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's
This
one thing
little
to have the
guy.
tape. It's a different story because everybody thinks of that with LTO right now, and that's great because they're always
Uh-huh.
backwards compatible for the tapes. But that wasn't the standard 35
Mhm.
years ago. It was reel to reel in
Mhm.
the most cases.
Oh, yeah.
On operating systems that may not exist anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. Keep it in the most native format you can get on that cheaper storage. I mean, that's the way things are going. Tape still has its place.
Oh, yeah,
For
it
all the
does.
great folks out there, it still has its place. But I agree. I think first and foremost, you should be looking at solutions like this because, again, from my perspective, you have obviously more use cases than just us. But from our
Sure.
perspective, it's how fast can you get it back?
Right. No, exactly. And that's one of the things too, that as you think about, how the Cloudian is designed, suppose in a normal environment, you're going to have 6 nodes. Okay. Well, those 6 nodes may have anywhere from 14 to 60 drives in a node. Okay. And then
Yeah.
those are set with obviously, different erasure coding depending on how you want to recover or lose drives. Some cases you can lose 2, 3, or 4 drives and still get your data back. So it's not like, oh, by the way, I was in the middle of writing something and now I can't recover it. Of course you can. That's why it's designed in that cluster environment. So you can always be rest assured that you can get your data back. And that's critical. The more threads and CPU you have, the faster your restores are going to happen. So as we move down the road with Veeam moving to the object storage environment, people are going to go, oh, well, I need this restored instantly. Well, think about that for just a second, Eric. When people always tell me that, I go, what do you have to do a restore because you've had a smoking hole event? And they go, well, we just go back and recover it. I said, well, where are you going to recover it to? What needs to
Yeah.
be recovered? Are you going to change that data? Do you need to build a server? It's not an instant point and click. You're going to have to think through that process. So the need to truly have an instantaneous recovery is about 1/100th of 1%. I mean, some files, yes, no big deal. It's a file. But we're talking about, hey, I need to restore 15 VMs from a data center. Well, you got to have a data center to put them in first, So
Well,
it's a much
yeah,
larger. Yeah.
that's where I always tell our partners it is, excuse me, I just choked on something,
You're fine.
is our solution. Getting it backed up is easy, but the real dollars for our partners are in everything you just described.
Sure.
What are you going to do? Have a plan, create a plan, test the
Mhm.
plan. What do you need in more than one site? Are you going to hire out to do that kind of stuff? So
Ladies and gentlemen, from the back of the room, test the plan. I repeat, test the plan.
Please, please. If you get anything out of any time I ever speak to you,
Test the damn plan.
don't be scared of this test. This isn't that kind of test. And you can study ahead of time. And we'll even give you the answers for for a DR test. We know the answers. We want you to succeed.
Eric,
That's
how many times have you walked into a conversation and go, hey, when's the last time you walked over and unplugged that rack? And then went, unplug what rack? Well, the one that's running all your stuff. Oh, we wouldn't do that. Well, how the hell do you know that your recovery is going to work, buddy? Oh, my God. Yeah.
I worked for a certain provider of DR services at one time. And anybody who looks on LinkedIn is going to figure out what I mean. But I remember it was like anything above 80% was kind of considered a success. And I'm like, that's awesome if those 80% are your most critical systems first. And second, let's try to get to 100.
Yeah.
You know, and that was doing tests quarterly. Now, I mean, there's so many other ways you can do it. And that's why I love solutions like these together, because you also can do that. You can replicate your data from site to site from within.
Oh, gosh, yes.
Your OS. I mean, yeah. Like, what are some of your favorite features within what you guys do?
Well, some of the things, obviously, the ability for object lock is there. The fact that I can do multiple styles of erasure coding within an environment. Okay, I'm one namespace. So if I have a data center in the UK, Los Angeles, and Australia, they're all in that one namespace, but I may have a replica that's running in Australia. I may have erasure coding that's in the UK, and then I may have something totally different as far as how it's designed in Los Angeles. Those things now all can replicate one to the other in the background. Plus, if I'm using Veeam on top of it, I can use Veeam's replication to do that as well. So now I get the value of replicas, i.e., now I can have tertiary copies of my most critical things in different parts of the world. So if I have a smoking hole event in Los Angeles, which God knows could happen any day now, we could spin stuff up in the UK. I also have that built-in bill back and sovereignty. So if I'm moving data between the UK and LA or Australia, I can tell it what data can and can't travel through those sovereign data lines. And
that's nice. Yeah, I like that.
Fantastic.
So you don't have to worry about breaking the rules.
Yeah, and it's all built in. People say, oh, what it costs. No, it doesn't. It's all built into the system. And if you have, like, you're a provider, okay, and you want to, supply S3 buckets to like some of your folks from any of the replicas that are out there, or Veeam wanting to target up in the cloud somewhere, that's perfectly fine. We generate a bill internally built into the system, no extra charge. To this bucket use this much data, and here's how many replicas they had. Do you want to charge for replicas? Yes or no? Boom, here comes your report. That's how much data they used that month. It's all built in. It's all built in. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
And the coolest part, aside from being able to do things in CLI, everything we just talked about can all be done from the GUI interface. And it's straightforward, point, click, done.
So the administrative component of this, once installation is done and it's architected correct, everything, administration is not tricky, is what I'm hearing.
Nothing to it. There truly is nothing to it. You can set it up, and one of the multi-tenancy features that's built in is that if we have a Veeam environment that's inside of, let's say, the FBI, okay? Mm-hmm. Inside of FBI, we're going to have critical secure records that no one's allowed but this group to get in. We're also going to have critical photography type things that no one's allowed to get in here, but I'm also going to have to do my backups within Veeam. So I'm going to create 3 different groups, and I'll do users within those groups. None of those users can see the other groups or even know that they exist, and only the users in those groups can create buckets in those groups. Thus, there's complete separation, as well as the ability for them to manage themselves and what they're doing.
Nice. So you're doing that logical separation, which is going to cut down on your costs overall. Mm-hmm. And the way you have it laid out, everything's an edge device. There's no more Correct. Central data center, and I mean that's the best way to access this data. Honestly, that's the vision of object storage, right?
Yep, that's exactly correct. Correct.
So how do you? I mean, and there's getting to be more of these kinds of products on the market. Mm-hmm. What's your main differentiator? If somebody was going to do a little comparison, why would they take the extra look at Cloudian?
Well, there's a couple of different things, and that's an excellent question. One of the things that we hear all the time is that, oh, so and so can do it. And I'm not going to point fingers or call names. This person can do it, that person can do it, they can do it. They really can't because they are not a full set of the S3 API model. They can't do all the things that we can do for one. The cost point that's there, they can't compete with the cost that we're going to give them to be able to use that for an on-prem solution. Two, they're not going to have the true compatibility to be able to replicate into in the clouds. It's usually a subset or something that's proprietary within those. If you walk away and say, you know what, this is crap, I don't want to do this anymore, there's no special weird locks on any of your data. You just point it at something else and move it over.
So it's just a regular old, when you're replicating into the traditional cloud, it's just a regular old S3 bucket with
that's exactly right
on the back end. Okay.
Yeah. And there's no gateway, which you'll see in a lot of products. They'll say, hey, it's no big deal. We can just run it through this process. And when they say that magic word called process, means they're going to put stuff in it that's not native S3, which means when you go to get it back, it's not really S3 data.
Yeah, interesting. So it's that proprietary. It's the question we ask a lot of times too, is you can put the data in, but what's going to happen when you want it out?
Yeah.
It's always the best question. As much as you want your customers to love your product, you have to ask those questions as a customer and as a partner who's putting solutions together. What do I do if things change? How do I get to that data?
Right. Well, and too, Eric, a lot of folks will ask, a question that I get all the time is that, well, we're using X right now. And, we got to about 3 petabytes and it started doing weird stuff. We're exabyte scalable. We're unlimited growth. The larger we get, the better we perform. And it's not like, oh, by the way, when you get to, because some of our customers, i.e. NBC, every episode of Saturday Night Live you've ever seen sits on our product, if you get to 200, 400, 600 petabytes of storage, there are things that are out there that they just can't get their hands around that. We can't wait to get bigger because that's what we do. The larger it is, the better it is for us to manage and the more throughput and performance you're going to get out of that environment.
So you're saying those numbers. I'm just trying to think of what the cost would be for traditional NAS to put that on there.
Oh, my Lord of mercy. You and I would be living, in the White House on the back lawn sipping martinis right now.
Yeah, no kidding. Or they would just be like, well, I guess we lost all the episodes from the 70s.
Yeah.
Sorry. Hope you remember them fondly because you're never going to see them again. We can't afford to keep them.
Right. Yeah. See you later. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just such a shift in how things are. Because honestly, they probably were still trying to keep masters around somewhere for things like that. When you think of video and audio and things like that. Sure. And if they can digitize them completely lossless, what a difference.
Well, I can think about it because Joe and I, and for those of you guys who are listening, Joe Monahan, good friend of mine, many, many, many years, did a lot of recording, been in bands, the whole bit. But I can remember, the first demo that I ever cut in Tampa, Florida, Moore Sound Studios. It was on 2-inch 48-track tape. Now, you can still get 2-inch 48-track tape. It's 15 arms and 3 legs, a small baby, and an Oompa Loompa, okay? Yeah. To get that. But it's gone to where now, at my desk, which you guys can't see, I do everything that I want to do right inside of Logic on top of my Mac. And I can get the most pristine recording or the trashiest recording all done electronically.
Depending on what filter you want to put it through.
That's exactly correct. It sounds like, dude, man, when you're in the backyard in the can, well, as a matter of fact, yes, I was. Yeah.
It's such a difference, such a shift and all that. And that, again, goes back to that whole tape concept.
Sure.
Tape still has its purpose. And yes, it's really cool. What was it? Dave Grohl did that whole project where he did nothing. He restored a studio to reel to reel and did the entire project that way or something like that. Similar to what you said on 24-track. And it's great. It's a novelty, but not many people outside of the guy who's been in, world famous bands for the past 25 years is going to be able to do that.
Of course, or afford it. Yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
So, it's again, going forward, what's affordably to, which brings me to a good question too. Like, cause you've dropped some killer names here. I'll give you that. Good for you, man. That's so awesome to hear the scaling. What is your target size?
Being truthful, we're looking at some products now that we have that are going to be in a rack solution, where you can put a small cluster for a small SMB. Okay. We normally start around 250 gigs is normally, terabytes, is where we're starting. I
Mhm.
have some other folks because we are software defined. We can do it on VMs or physical hardware, anything x86 that will
Okay.
start out with, 100 terabytes. But they've gone from 100 terabytes to now they're over a petabyte. And they just shifted from those virtual machines into physical hardware. We just kind of floated over, you know. But normally around 250 is what you're looking
Okay.
at terabyte wise. Yeah.
All
Mhm.
right. It's not overly large. That's actually
No, it's
that's
not.
just about everybody out there anymore.
Well, I mean,
And
I
you brought
look
up another
across the
point there.
room at the 30 terabytes I have in my little tiny lab over here. Okay,
No kidding. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I hear you on that. I feel like, data footprints grow, they don't shrink. Ask anybody.
yeah.
So, yeah, that's the beautiful thing. Once they get started, they're only going to consume more. It's a great
Hmm.
thing about selling storage.
Yeah.
Which actually, you brought up something really good in there being software defined and running on either a VM or hardware. That means that you're doing something the partners also love, which is that hardware drag. So
Yep.
you're selling hardware for the partners. You're one of those ones like us that's retiring multiple quotas when you build a solution
Of
in many
course.
cases.
And the thing with the partners too that we want them to understand is that we're not going to come in like I've seen so much happen over the years of doing this, Eric, and I know you have too. We don't swoop into the last minute and go, oh, we're going to pull this deal. No, we want the partners there. We want the partners to do the services. We want them to understand the whole picture, and they really need to understand they're going to make X number of points off of Veeam, but when they bring Cloudian with us and Veeam and Cloudian go in together, they're going to make a ton of money. A
Yeah.
ton of money. And it's not money that they're go, oh, just because it's touching. No, because this is a solution that the customers need. It's not like, oh, by the way, we're in business because we just invented a path and we're shoving it down people's throats. Let me tell you what, ransomware is never going away, ever.
It's
And
only getting worse. You would think
of
it would be
course.
getting better. More people are aware of it. Guess what? They're just getting smarter on the other side.
They are. There's no question about it. I mean, I don't know if you met my friend Jeff Lanza from the FBI. I mean, he and I have spoken together several times and done a lot of seminars and stuff about it. And you can't believe the stuff that continues today that doesn't get reported, much less the things that we hear about. I mean, it's
Yeah.
crazy. You know,
Yeah.
businesses are shut forever. Why? Well, because all their data's gone, you
Yeah.
know? So,
Yeah. I mean, you bring up very good points about all of that with, I think number one, like you said, ransomware, you could talk for hours with customers and partners just on
mhm,
that. Number one topic still. So anytime you have something that fits into that solution. And I think
mhm.
that's the other thing that you brought that I wanted to bring up too, is that how long has Cloudian been around?
We've been around a little over, I believe it's a little over 10 years now. Yeah,
That's
almost
not
11. Yeah.
that's not an infant anymore in this
Oh,
industry.
no, we're way
People
past
are
all that.
adopting technologies that are way newer than that without thinking twice. So when you're investing in these kinds of solutions, you're
Mhm,
not investing in something that is fly by night
mhm,
or somebody just came out or is the hot flavor of the day. These are
mhm,
things that people are moving to because they
mhm.
see the value in it.
Well, when you think, and I'll drop the names of some of our customers that we have, and Telmex, okay, Rockstar Games. Probably never heard of those guys if you play video games. NBC, the CDC, Milnet, all of the research and stuff that CDC does. It's not something they're going to walk out and go, oh, by the way, I'll just throw it on any old thing that's out here. These
Right.
guys are saving lives and curing disease. They can't lose that data. The number of labs that are doing genomics research on top of this, the number of county governments who have their video camera from their police vest, Department of Defense, and on and on and on. And it's a simple solution to implement. It's a safe solution that will protect your data. And when you bundle it with Veeam, you have got the nonstop ability to manage your data globally from a replica standpoint to a recovery point to an immutability point, period.
That's a huge statement, and it's a great statement, because that's really what folks are looking for anymore. Something where they don't have to think so hard every day.
Right.
Let's
My
do it right the
brain
first time.
hurts. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So for the partners, how would you guide them to, for those that haven't started looking into Cloudian or on-prem object, how would you guide them to get started about looking into Cloudian solutions?
Well, obviously, you can jump on our website, which is cloudian.com. There's a place on the bottom that says contact us, those kinds of things. I'm on LinkedIn. You can drop me a note. You can always send any kind of text or tweet. We're out all over social media that says, hey, I'd like to get to know more about it. But more than that, you're going to find folks at the fine company of Veeam that are going to say, hey, tell me about some of the S3 solutions. And they're going to tell you how and where we are, because better together means a better solution for your customer and longevity and stickiness for that environmental tool you're giving them to go forward with.
Yeah. And that's the huge thing, that co-sell. Like we said, it's a two-way co-sell with us. It's a three-way when you start bringing the hardware vendors in.
Yeah,
that's pretty good power coming in to help a partner complete a sales, to get a hardware and two software vendors together on the same page.
Yeah.
It's a hard solution for somebody else to compete against at that point, I would say.
Yeah.
So I didn't give you this last question.
Sure.
I didn't tell you about this ahead of time, but if you could give some advice to your younger self, say your 25-year-old self today, what would that be?
I actually have been asked this a couple times, and being truthful, thinking about the career that I always wanted to be a rock star. I mean, I really did. But, in doing that and thinking about that, you need to be happy at what you do. I don't care if you dig ditches, if you turn a wrench, if you're a brain surgeon, if you decide that you want to make chemicals for rockets being launched, or you want to go into IT. When you wake up every morning, if there's a grin on your face, knowing that you get to do exactly what you love to do every single day, you won. You won.
Yeah.
That's it. Be happy. You got to do something that you love. If you don't, you will hate every minute of every day that you work. You will.
Great advice. Excellent advice. And one more thing before we go.
Yes.
Plug your podcast.
Oh, yeah. I'm the Ninja Cast. It comes out every Thursday, and my links are out on social media for LinkedIn, Instagram, and on Twitter. But we've had the illustrious Mr. E on the podcast, and
that was fun talk.
Yeah,
we talked no tech. It was great.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I steer away from the technical side of things because I want to show the side of the person as opposed to that. Because you and I both know, Eric, relationships are built with people. You're a smart guy. Appreciate you. Love you to death. Most of my buddies that are at Veeam are super smart guys. And I just lay back and go, my God, I'm not going to speak. I'm just going to let them talk, But in doing that, it's because we all get along because we have that ridiculous sense of humor that, life is short. Grab it and run with it as hard as you can go, man. So.
Yeah. And I think going back to it, I think a lot of us found that thing. We are happy at what we do.
Yeah.
And it shows when we get together, when we have conversations like this. I mean, if this what we just did is work, then I want to keep working. Yeah.
Sign me up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for the time today. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your, I know, busy schedule, because you're about to hit the road for the rest of the week here. You've had a lot of busy activities going on. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me and talk to the partners out there for Veeam.
Yeah, well, Eric, thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure. Absolutely, as always. And by the way, go Penguins. Yeah.
I had to sneak that in before we go. I didn't stop recording soon enough. Take care, everyone. Talk to you on the next episode. This has been Veeam Partner Perspectives with Eric Doherty. Thank you for listening.